Hi everyone, Joaquin Castro, Congressman for San Antonio, and I wanted to report back to y'all. I said yesterday that today my staff and I, along with Vicente Gonzalez, the Congressman from the Rio Grande Valley, and his staff, would be inspecting this shelter facility that is run by the Department of Health and Human Services, and specifically the Office of Refugee Resettlement. It is the one facility where they keep pregnant girls, often teenagers, and other teenage unaccompanied minors. But in this shelter, they also have 3 babies, I believe, the babies of these girls. And so when I was in Dili, for example, there were pregnant women there. There was a 19-year-old woman, a 21-year-old woman. At the other facilities, there are pregnant women. But in San Benito, this is where they send pregnant girls. So we started by asking the question, okay, what's the age range of people here? And they said it's between 0 and 17. And that's when they told us that there were 3 young kids, babies, and that the youngest unaccompanied minor, now obviously not pregnant or not somebody that delivered a baby, but just an unaccompanied minor, was a 5-year-old girl who was in that facility as an unaccompanied minor. And so we pressed more and asked more specific questions, but this has been the most secretive, least transparent administration that we've dealt with. And so they wouldn't give us specific information about particular people. And then I said, well, I asked questions about that didn't involve a particular individual, but just metadata, so to speak. For example, I asked, how many of these girls were sexually assaulted, versus what is categorized as somebody having a relationship. For example, there's some girls that come through there that are 17 years old, that may have had a relationship with a boy, right? So I said, what's the breakdown there? And they wouldn't even give us that basic information. And so again, just a lot of secrecy around that. There are a lot of problematic things here. First, during the Trump administration, the average length of time that people are staying in this facility has increased dramatically. And the longest stay for any person there right now is 400 days. So there is a girl who has been there longer than a year. Obviously, she's a girl. That's not a woman. This is somebody that's away from her family. And the average length of stay is 200 days. So over half a year, right? 6 months. These are folks that cannot leave this facility. It's not like Stipsy and Pearsall or Carnes or even that Dili trailer prison. I would say it's not as bad as those places. This is like a cross between a dormitory and a school. Very Spartan, but not certainly what Pearsall is or even Dili. And yet these young girls are having to stay in this place. Again, where they can go is controlled. The phone time that they have is controlled. All of these things, and they're away from their family. And there's no doctor on site, so there's no OBGYN. There is medical staff. There is a nurse practitioner. But there are just a lot of unanswered questions. The questions about how many are dealing with sexual assault becomes obviously especially relevant because some of them are carrying the children of people who sexually assaulted them. And this is at a time that the Trump administration is trying to change a rule that would essentially prevent a lot of these girls who want to get abortions, who don't want to keep the children of the people who sexually assaulted them. It would basically prevent them from doing that. So the Trump administration is working on a new rule right now out of the executive branch that would force these young girls to carry the babies of people who raped them. That's the rule that they're trying to work on right now. And so I hope that people will speak up about it, that they will let their members of Congress know, and of course the administration know, that they disagree with it, that it's cruel to these young girls, if this rule comes into place. We still have time to prevent that from happening, but that's what they're working on right now. And so please, I hope that y'all will speak up, that your voice is making a difference. The good thing is that the number of people being held in this facility has decreased recently, just like the number of people at Dilley. Dilley has gone down dramatically over the last 2 months, from 1,100 people down to 100 people. I'm going back to Dilley tomorrow with Greg Kassar, and so we're going to be inspecting Dilley again. We'll visit with a lot of the people that we spoke with last time. We want to see, obviously, who is still there. The problem with ICE is that once they release somebody, whether they deport the person or they release them back into their community in the United States, they don't keep track of them. They basically go off the system. So you can't tell by looking into the system where that person is. So unless you know them or their family member or their attorney, they basically disappear off the system, and it becomes hard to track. But we're going to go try to track down those cases and inspect Dilley again. But again, for the San Benito facility, I don't know that any member of Congress had been there, certainly in the last few years, during the second Trump administration. And so it was important for Vicente and I to go over there. Again, besides the young girls, the teenage girls, including the ones that are pregnant right now, you also have these teenage girls who have babies there. So there were 3 babies there. We walked by and we passed by a baby that was resting asleep in a crib. We walked by another room and we saw a girl that was 13 or 14 years old who was holding her baby in her arms. So these girls are especially vulnerable. And we wanted to make sure that we went to go inspect this facility and let the Trump administration know that we're paying attention, that we're watching what's going on, that there has been cruelty in many different facilities. We want to make sure that these girls and their kids are protected. So I will give you all another update after we inspect Dilley. Thank you again for speaking up. I know that this has been a very intense day, that a lot of the discussion and the news has revolved around the president and his threats, genocidal threats against Iran in destroying their country and their civilization. That rhetoric is not only reckless, but it's incredibly dangerous. And I think it also speaks to something deeper, which is that this president is unwell. And I think we've known that, but he's also shown dangerous signs of decline. And I do think that the vice president and his cabinet need to convene to consider the 25th Amendment. I know that that's a very serious thing. I don't say that lightly, but for all Americans who have followed what this president, how he's conducted himself, the rhetoric that he's used, also the clear decline. He said just yesterday, I believe, took credit for killing Osama bin Laden, which obviously everybody knows had nothing to do with his presidency or his time in office. Again, this is the president of the United States who has nuclear weapons and the use of nuclear weapons at his disposal. And so it's not somebody down the block or at the bar who's just making comments. This is somebody whose decline can be dangerous for the country. Also think that Congress needs to reconvene and take up these issues as well. We need to vote on that war powers resolution. We need Democrats and Republicans to step forward to accomplish a ceasefire at a minimum and give the Congress a chance to make a larger decision about any kind of war. Y'all, I have been clear about my opinion on this and my perspective, and y'all can go back and look on that. But what we've seen from the president is reckless and dangerous, and I think it belies some deeper issue with him that needs to be taken seriously. All right? We'll talk to you soon. I'll let you know tomorrow after we visit Dilley, we go inspect Dilley, what the deal is.